let's talk about the latest legal moves, starting with what happened yesterday. Those filings that you guys put in federal court. What are they? Can you explain to me what they are, and what do you hope they accomplish for you guys?
Yesterday, we filed what's called a motion for authorization in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is a federal court. And what this is that federal habeas is always the last resort. It's a right guaranteed by the federal Constitution, but you're supposed to start in state court because that's where criminal convictions are, when we're talking about something like Robert's case. But the law allows that when you're in this situation where the state court has not been providing due process, you have a right to try to go to the federal court and say, please, 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 let us start over here in our quest for a new trial. And one of the factors is if you can establish that there's a high probability that you're innocent. So it's quite relevant here, but we had, and I will say as a Texan and someone who practices these days almost exclusively in state court, it is really my hope and prayer that Texas will fix this Texas created problem. But the clock is ticking down. We're just painfully close to an execution date that we've argued should never have been set. And the court in Texas is still deliberating, filings that were submitted in February. So we have gone to the federal court and are pounding on the door saying, please give us permission to file a new federal habeas petition, which would ultimately still be seeking a new trial for Robert based on his actual innocence and the junk science that is, critical to the conviction that we say is entirely unsound.
And this is just a quick question, just for me to understand the system. If, let's say, you do get those filings and you get that new trial in that federal court, who takes up that case? Does it go back to the state? Like if it was to get a new trial? Okay.
Yes, if he'd still have to be tried in a Texas state court, but it's like the in our system where you have both state and federal, there's sensitivity, and federal courts don't like to tell state courts what to do about criminal matters. But the fact is, the federal Constitution is the highest law of the land. And if somebody's constitutional rights have been violated, it's supposed to be the federal court that says, stop that. This person is still entitled to that fundamental protection. And here our argument is the fundamental right to due process by being executed for a crime that never occurred is a problem. And so it's, there are all kinds of ways to raise concerns about due process, but this is the most fundamental, that it shouldn't be okay for a state to kill someone when there's been overwhelming evidence of his innocence and no one has yet looked at it.
And I think you kind of answered it there. And with yesterday's filing is kind of an answer to this next question. But sorry, but talk to me about the move that you guys did recently about not seeking any clemency. Why do you think asking the board again to step in, the state board to step in, is not gives Mr. Roberson a chance, a good chance?
Well, I would say this is not a common development, and this is one of the rare situations where the facts completely fit this federal right. And we have been waiting and hoping for the state court to take this up, but time is running out. And there's a sense that the federal court has this, its duty to honor the Constitution and serve and see that it is followed by even the state court. So it's like a way to go to another body who has some authority. The Fifth Circuit can only tell us, yes, you can file, but then it would be a federal trial court in East Texas that would have to decide, did the state court get it wrong and we should get a new trial? So it's complicated, but it's another opportunity to try to save an innocent man's life. And so we we feel like we shouldn't have to be in this posture, but we are grateful to have another door to pound on.
Let me ask you this question. We're exactly 2 weeks away from the execution happening, if nothing happens. You've done a lot of moves. We've been with you across the past few years, and time again with the decisions from different courts, both in your favor and against it, or Mr. Robertson's favor. But what's left to do at this point, Gretchen, other than what you've done already legally?
Really, the only option left is if the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals denies relief, there is a means to go to the Supreme Court of the United States. But every day that's ticking by eats into our opportunity to do that and is highly stressful, because the Supreme Court does not like last minute appeals. What is frustrating is this shouldn't be a last minute appeal, because our habeas application has been pending since February. So for Mr. Roberson to be punished for something beyond his control is troubling, but that's where we are now. But after that, the only other thing that is possible, and it's possible in any moment, is Governor Abbott could decide to exercise his power to grant a one-time 30-day reprieve, which would pull down the execution date. And it doesn't have to be based on anything except his sense that there are open questions. He doesn't have to explain himself. It's a power unique to the governor. And that would stop the ticking time bomb of this execution and allow these courts to decide these very serious matters involving massive amounts of new evidence.
Have you spoken to Mr. Robertson recently in the past few days, or
I have not. And, unfortunately with death row, you have to schedule legal calls, and I have not been able to get one fast enough. You can't call your client when there's breaking news. It's really a very painful situation for both lawyer and client, but that's the way it is. I have a visit scheduled with him next week, and with all my heart, I hope that is not the last visit. Sorry. That is what I'm faced with right now.
I completely understand, and like I said, we've seen this whole process, and like you said at the beginning, I think of this interview, what we saw yesterday and what's coming up Saturday should lift everything up that you guys are doing, and shine an even bigger light to what's happening.
Yesterday, a very conservative coalition came together at the state capitol and over again said Robert Roberson deserves a new trial. This was stunning to me, that you have people who play very much on the other team, shall we say, who are very committed to crime victims' rights, but who see the injustice in this case, and that it doesn't do anyone any good. It doesn't make anybody in Texas safer. It doesn't improve the criminal justice system if we are known as a state that executed an innocent man based on a scientific hypothesis that has never been validated and has been scrapped by anyone keeping up with the scientific and medical literature.
And talk to me about the rally this weekend. What do you expect then?
I am hoping that the word will get out, and that people who have been following this case and are deeply concerned, Texans from wherever, will come to the state capitol and hear from some of the people who know Robert best. This includes his spiritual advisor, a woman named Donna Farmer, who is so lovely and has spoken out so often. She's a former English teacher who lives in Tyler, coming to Austin to be there with us. Brian Wharton, the former lead detective who helped the state get this conviction, who no longer believes that anything about that trial was fair and is adamantly convinced of Robert's innocence. He will be there. And there will be an exoneree who has been speaking out, Josh Burns, on behalf of Robert, because he himself was wrongly convicted using the shaken baby hypothesis. But he sees how his horrific experience of spending 1 year in prison is nothing compared to what Robert is facing. And yet it was the same junk science that was used to really dismantle their families for a time, and is an injustice that has to stop. And that's another thing the conservatives really recognize. They're very strong on this. Parental rights are not often honored as they should be. And there are all kinds of improprieties with the way Robert's parental rights and therefore Nikki's rights were disregarded at the very outset of this case, when he was just presumed guilty and then told he couldn't even be at the hospital as his daughter is dying. So conservatives who have studied this case get it. And they were out en masse yesterday to make that statement. And it was very heartening. And I hope word of that got to Robert.
Just one last question before I let you go real quick. Anything I forgot to ask, Gretchen, or anything you think I should know or the public should know this on October the 2nd, 2 days before the execution?
David, this is not about politics. This is about the life of a man who anyone who has looked carefully at this case thinks is innocent, was wrongfully convicted. Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, you name it. People who have no interest in politics are concerned about how this makes Texas look. And that includes John Grisham, world famous novelist. He is so bothered by this. He is following every move and is looking to see how the story ends. And I just hope enough voices can amass that we can bend the arc away from a catastrophe.